Welcome to episode 183 of the Hunting Party Podcast. This is Euripides from WoW Insider, OutDPS, and the Call to Auction podcast.
And I'm Darkbrew from thebrewhall.com and the Brewhall on Twitter.
And I'm Arth from the Warcraft Hunters Union.
And I'm Alexander from the Hunting Party Podcast.
And today is Saturday, August the 24th, 2013. And if you want to participate in the chat room but aren't registered or have a cool chat name yet, just go to the chat window on the Hunting Party Podcast page, create a name, and join the fun.
Yeah,
speaking of... Frost Time isn't taken this week.
Talking over my lines, Ollie.
Somebody drink.
Yeah, that's a drinking game thing. Speaking of the chat room, we are joined today by BM Jager, the unfortunately named Buff Canada, Elapidae, Explosive Traps, Geth, Gobout, Induates, JCS Way, Ligerwolf, Lyriana, Mib Kavibs, Slugslinger, Warvinny, Zoraxthus, Morgatho, and some guests. And if you moderator, as always, is the interrupting Alexander, and you can send your questions into Ali in a private message by left-clicking her name, selecting PM, then typing in the new tab. If you'd like to send questions during not show time, you can email us at huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get to it on a future show.
Future is completely random.
Exactly, maybe way in the future.
Before we get to the news, we have a guest this week. Joining us once again is V from Ask Mr. Robot, and she'll be going over some of the features they have in store on the site while we wait for patch 5.4. So welcome, V, back to the show.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me back.
Hey, thanks for coming. So, just a brief bit of news here. As you may have heard already, the release of patch 5.4 has been pushed back to, September 10th now? I guess it's a week or two beyond what they had said it would be.
Yeah, and I think this generally happens with patches where, hey, here's the date, and Blizzard's like, no, guys, just kidding, here's the actual date, but they have confirmed this one. They said, yep, September 10th, we're not pushing it back unless we do, but so it'll be a couple more weeks now than what we were originally anticipating, but we still have most of the changes in from 5.4, so it's a nice chance to have V on and to talk about some of the changes.
Yeah, and they've gotten much better about their releases anyway. I mean, who knows if they're going to do another who knows, maybe the next expansion will be going to beta testing a week after patch 5.4 is released. I mean, that seems to be their trend lately, so I don't know if we can...
Let's hope not. We need a break here.
Harp on them too much for pushing this out, a couple of weeks here.
Has anybody heard any rumors about the next expansion? Any... So I know there was rumors circulating about pandas before they actually announced Mist of Pandaria.
There was a false rumor that was leaked a couple weeks back or whatever, where there was a domain registration by Blizzard. I forget what it was called, the Dark Below or something like that, and there was speculation that was either Diablo or the next World of Warcraft expansion. I think it just turned out to be a giant hoax that pretty much anyone can register anything for anybody.
I was going to say, man, you know what I would do if I worked at Blizzard? I would be constantly registering domain names. All kinds of nonsense. Waiting for people to, speculate about it, and then, the just signal-to-noise ratio would be unbearably low.
And especially if you do something popular like Murlocs.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say the murlocsattack.org or something.
World of Murloc Craft, an alternate universe in which every single character and NPC is transformed into an equivalent Murloc.
Yes. I would
We already wear a Murloc. It's one of our armor sets.
I'm kidding.
Murloc heads. Murlocheads.com. Even better.
That'd be beautiful.
It'd be good for April 1st as well.
Yes, that's true. I would probably register several on April 1st.
Yeah, I'm probably the only person who wouldn't mind if they just legitimately jumped the shark and said, yeah, we're doing something that's total self-parody. Enjoy it, gamers.
Yes, I'd
just
be into that.
Forget the lore, forget all of that. I don't really follow much of that anyway. Just do something completely batty.
Batty is always entertaining. So we should probably get to our interview here. V, you've been doing a fair bit of, the rounds lately in terms of talking about the patch and stuff. Did you have anything you wanted to talk? Well, before we do this, we keep on assuming that people know who you are and where you're from. But you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're from?
Sure. So I'm from Ask Mr. Robot, and if you don't know Ask Mr. Robot yet, you load your character in, and we optimize your gems, enchants, and reforges with the click of one button. Pretty easy. Yeah.
Yep,
And I like walks on the
askmrrobot.com.
beach.
Yeah, it is.
mean,
It
who
is a cool.
doesn't?
It is a pretty cool site. I have my character pulled up right now on the site, looking at it, and it's really a one-stop shop for, hey, here's some gems I can do. Here's how I should reforge. So like I used to use WoW Reforge, and that was just for the reforging initially, and then they started to implement some others. But this is sort of one stop. It shows you exactly what your top DPS is right now, given your gems and chance gear, etc., and then what you're capable of if you're optimized. You can manually edit stat weights, but the default ones seem pretty good to me the few times I've used it. So you can edit stat weights if you want to mess with it there. So it's very customizable, but also very easy to use as a way to optimize your character.
You know, I don't actually know anybody who takes walks on beaches. Mostly because I'm in Canada and all the beaches here are like minus 40 in the winter, but I mean,
The people that I know do it. It's like you're walking with your surfboard
walking with
to like
your surfboard.
to go out to like find the waves. Like
Is that some
right?
sort of like alternate snowboard?
Yes. I did learn to surf once.
Really?
Yeah, I was in Costa Rica. I have a cousin that lives in Costa Rica every now and then, and he lives on the beach because, well, it's incredibly cheap. And so he called his little surf buddy guy to train me, and it's like 6 in the morning to get up for the tide, which is obviously not my sport after I learned this. And yeah, I got up on the first try.
Oh, cool.
Congratulations! I had a windsurfing lesson one time, and that was
That'd be fun.
pretty atrocious. I was on vacation. I was like, yeah, windsurfing, awesome. And after about, the 45-minute lesson, I was out there with my board and sail for a good hour, going about 5 feet at a time, then falling over, and then repeating it.
I feel like windsurfing would be harder in that you probably have to have a lot of upper body strength. Is that true?
I don't know.
I would think so, because you've got to hang on to that. There's
Right?
a giant sail attached to the surfboard, so you've got to hold on to that.
Maybe that was my problem. I don't know what I was missing.
Whereas like
I'll
surfing
let
is
her
just a
post
balance
next
issue.
day.
Yeah, Canadians float like rocks, so we typically tend to not do water sports. We just hang out at the beer place at the.
I think you're doing it right. That's definitely the way to go.
We watch other people surf. It's awesome.
Right.
That's become a better sport for me as well, so I agree.
So there was a big kerfuffle recently about, well, I don't know, kerfuffle, announcement at least, about some changes in a new patch about RPPM trinkets, specifically
yes.
double dipping on haste.
Mhm.
Yeah, we haven't actually talked about this on the show,
Oh.
even though it's come out yet. So maybe you want to run us through what they changed and tell us
Sure.
from the perspective of an Ask Mr. Robot, what do they call you, minions or employees?
Minions for sure.
Minions. From an Ask Mr. Robot minion, what the deal is with this.
Sure. So just to recap for everyone who might not know how haste affects the trinkets right now. So you've got the RPPM trinkets, which are real proc per minute. So it means that there's a certain number of procs per minute they expect you to get. So it doesn't matter how often you hit the boss. It's not chance on hit. It's just, hey, and every minute we expect this to hit 5 times or whatever the rule is. So what happened with haste is they said, well, haste is cool. We're going to let haste increase the chances per minute for it to proc, and everyone's like, oh, sweet. So what's sort of happening with all of the stat weights is once you started getting RPPM items, which are trinkets, the legendary metagem, and some weapon enchants, haste started to become the best stat. So it doesn't matter that crit used to be the best stat. Once you get these RPPM things, haste is now better because it can really increase your DPS everywhere. So everybody has all, stat weights, and haste is best for nearly every class these days. So now, with the patch, they're like, well, haste was really double dipping, so now haste isn't going to affect most of the RPPM trinkets. So one example would be if you have like a chance to get extra crits, and haste increases that. Well, now haste is doing 2 things. It's increasing your chance for it to proc, and haste also increases how many times you can hit or use your abilities. So haste kind of double dipped, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so what you're saying is, crit is in one example. Another good example is agility. Every point of agility we have, in addition to what we normally do, is a ton more damage per hit. And the more hits we do, it sort of magnifies or multiplies
Right.
its effect. So an agility proc in an RPPM situation means, every point of haste you get means more frequent procs, better, I guess, uptime.
Right.
And then on top of it, while you're procced, means you get more advantage out of that proc because you're
Right.
going to be using it more.
That's exactly right, yeah. So they are removing the haste effect on the RPPM trinkets, and then they adjusted the chance to proc to kind of accommodate for that. So if it normally was a base proc chance of 5 per minute, haste was getting people up to, say, 10 per minute. I have no idea. Then they're like, okay, you know what, we'll put it at like 7. Just kind of call it even, right?
Okay, so no matter what your stats are, your RPPM is going to be really the same proc per minute as everybody else?
Correct, yeah.
Interesting.
Now, there are a few trinkets that haste will still affect it, and one good example is for healers. So say it gives you mana. Say it has 5 procs per minute, and it gives you mana. Well, having more haste doesn't affect that proc at all, or sorry, the mana. It's just straight up mana. So they're letting haste continue to affect those. So
because
I'll
they
probably
weren't
have
double
to.
dipping.
Right, so I'll probably have to work on a big blog post that tells people what's affected, what's not, because even I don't know. It's like you have to go through and read every single one, and so it's not a blank going away on the proc chance. It's only when you double dip they're taking it away.
So in that case, if you had a trinket that did, every chance it procs, it just, smashed your opponent in the face for 10,000 damage. That, as an example, would not be affected by this change to the way haste works?
Yes.
Huh.
So in relative to 5.3 currently, haste is probably going to be devalued a little bit in 5.4. Am I assuming that correctly?
Yeah, and we're going to go through, look at all the stat weights. And normally, we would leave 5.3 stat weights alone because, well, it makes sense. And then we put in new 5.4 weights, and as people get gear, they change the stat weights. But now we're going to have to go through and bump haste down for all of these. And of course, people are going to look and be like, oh my god, 5.4 came out and every single gem changed. I know, I'm sorry, but now haste isn't as good. Because so if you look at our site, I have to relook at it for hunters. But for a lot of the classes, we have tier 14 weights, and then we have tier 15, and then we have tier 15 with our PPM. And haste is generally not the best stat, or best secondary stat at least, until you have the RPPM stuff. So that will no longer be the case. We'll probably just delete all of the RPPM stat weights presets and just be like, all right, use the base tier 15.
Yeah, so presumably, the secondary stats will be pretty similar to what they were, I guess, prior to RPPM being introduced into the game then.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't mean haste will be worthless, but we saw a lot of people starting to stack haste once they got past a certain number of RPPM items, and we'll probably see a little bit less of that now.
Yep.
Okay.
I can feel call to action taking notes over there.
Oh, gotta change the gems.
Yeah, no, that doesn't really have any effect. It's all... I'll bore you guys a bit with that some other day.
So with 5.4, I think you guys mentioned on your site that you were working on an in-game add-on. Do you want to talk about that at all and where it is? And
yeah, so right now some of you may know we have an in-game add-on, but the only thing it does is it exports the gear from your bags and bank to an AskMrRobot.lua file, and then you upload that file to our website, and that powers the Best in Bags feature. So it doesn't do anything in-game, really. It just exports data. So now with 5.4, we're beefing it up a lot. We're going to let you import all of your optimizations. So it basically imports like a shopping and a to-do list. And then it'll do the automatic reforges, which will be nice. Woohoo! So that'll be really nice so that you don't have to Alt-Tab all the time anymore. You can just pull it into game and then go to the auction house, and we'll tell you all the names of all the gems and stuff, so you can tell your Jewel Crafter friends, I need 3 gems, name this, and so we're trying to make it nice and easy.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys are probably pretty well along this process already, but if you could just make a part of that add-on giving me the ability, because you know how there's like a standard format for expressing a reforge
Mhm.
thing. So if you could have your thing in addition to all the stuff you're currently doing, export your reforge into a string, and then also accept strings for reforge, like because that way it would allow us to compare what we're getting from. Let's say that we have some sort of tool that we use ourselves, or sort of like if there are certain places out there where you can do weird experimental math on reforging and stuff like that.
Sure.
It just, that way we'd be able to, if we did end up using, like if we wanted to be able to compare the reforge between two of them, we'd be able to.
Sure. Yeah, so what it'll do is it'll import everything, and then there will be 3 screens. So you'll have a screen for reforges, so it will list all the reforges out if that's what you're looking for.
Okay.
And then it'll have like a gem screen and tell you here's not only the gems you need, but here's the items you have to put them in, and then same with enchants.
Wow.
So it will list all of that stuff out for you so you can see it all. And then if you want to do the automatic reforging, it'll do it. But it's not like it'll be hidden. It'll still list out all of the reforges that you would have to do.
Okay, and if I wanted to, would I be able to input a list of reforges that I wanted to do from some other source that wasn't an optimization calculation by Mr. Robot?
I see what you're saying. No, not yet, but I see what you're saying, and maybe we can add that in a future date.
It's not a common thing. It's just every so often when you, like, sometimes you want to try out different things, and the optimization that you would get from something that's assuming you want to do the most DPS may not be, like, it'd be nice to be able to say, okay, generate, play around with your stat weights and come up with some sort of reforge like schedule or reforge list that isn't what's the optimal that's being recommended by the tool, but it's something that you just want to test out, for example.
Sure, right.
But anyways, it's not. You know what? Now that I think of it, this would probably be possible the way you guys have set it up. I just have to change the stat weights.
Yeah, if you play with it on our site, and you can also lock things in. Like you can lock in reforges, well, anything, and then whatever you are seeing on the screen, when you export it, that's what it'll do.
Oh, cool.
Yep. So whatever view you have, you can lock in whatever you want, and then pull that out. And we actually put in a reforge only mode now
Really?
on the website. Yeah. Yeah, so that's new. That's been a popular request. Even though the disclaimer Mr. Robot makes me say is it's best to optimize everything at once. But there are situations where you're like, oh, it's an alt, or oh, I don't have time or the money to just change everything around. Just give me the reforges. So we offer that now too.
That makes sense. I don't know why I would want to just optimize reforging, but I can see why others might. Of course, I'm a completely one tune. Well, I guess 2-tune occasionally, but usually just my hunters. So I want to make sure I'm doing everything correct on that one particular tune, so I wouldn't cut corners. But I can see why some people would just want part of it instead of all of it.
Right, and that's why we resisted so long. We're like, but it makes no sense. You should do it all. And there's like anywhere between a few billion and then even sometimes more than a quintillion combinations of relevant gems, enchants, and reforges. And by relevant, I mean we're not putting strength gems in hunters.
Right,
we're only looking at, and I was blown away. Like, when we looked at this, like, I think my character had, like, 200 quadrillion. I'm like, really? That many combinations with just, like, 16 items? So, yes. So, people out there to optimize everything. It's a big math problem, so Mr. Robot's got you covered. Of course, if you eliminate it and just do reforges, it's a lot less. But
well, how long did it take you guys to sort of tackle that? Was that a big deal, or was that?
Yeah, it was a big deal. So our first algorithm, which is what we had all the way up until, we were always refining it, but we never did a major overhaul. That algorithm got most everybody to the optimal solution, but we couldn't confirm it on any single person. And then when it wasn't right, it was about 0.1 to 0.5% off from the optimal. So the real trick is being able to guarantee optimal while still being fast. Because you can't go through every single combination one by one. So you have to do fancy math tricks. And for any math nerds out there, we use a branch and bound method.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So got it.
I have some idea. Yeah.
Right. So the basic idea is you look at a whole branch, like if you picture a family tree, and it's like, well, if I use agility in my helm, here's a branch, and you kind of just look at the highest possible score that anything could get, and if it doesn't beat your current score, you throw it out. So that took several months to do to perfect that and make sure it was still fast. And so then the fun part, because we're all nerds, is we had all these people using the beta algorithm, and we logged every single case and result to our servers. And then at night, we would run that against a program that did go through every single quadrillion,
wow.
Right? But it's on our computer, not on the server, right? So we can actually do that. And so it would run overnight and compare results so that we could confirm that it was actually accurate. And we'd, out of maybe 1,000, we would get 10 that were wrong. Okay, and then we go through, look, and figure out what we need to tweak in the algorithm. So the last test we did before we put it live, we had 200,000 characters that we ran it on, and not a single one was wrong.
Oh.
So, right? So
That's some pretty interesting
yeah.
algorithm and math kind of technology you guys have going there.
Yeah, it was a serious endeavor, lots of whiteboarding, and it's just all sorts of random things you have to figure out. Like we have the algorithm, and then it's things like, well, we can put the gems in any items we want, but what if somebody has, the yellow haste gem in this piece and the yellow or the orange hybrid over here? And we just swapped it. That's the only thing we did, is we swapped it on them. Well, they're going to be like, seriously? Can you put it back? So then you have to figure in, like, all right, first you optimize, and then you go through and, like, have logic to scan through their gear to try to not, like, make people annoyed that all you did was move a few gems. And you still have the same
that's
socket
true.
bonuses, right? So, yeah, so it's
That's
little
a
things
good
like
point.
that add up.
Yeah, well, I assume that 200,000 characters all were optimized, and then 200,001, the first person that posted to your
Yes.
forum was the first one that was wrong, because of course
Right.
he was probably I see this all the time where it's like, hey, do this, and this, and it's not even just for WoW, but any website where you're telling them to follow something, and then someone's like, nope, it told me to gem for 10% hit. So
Right.
no,
we did
I'm
have
pretty,
a couple people
I'm
break
sure
it.
didn't, but
Yeah, and so the people have broken it. The algorithm's actually been technically right. It's that they find a different bug in the system. So it'll be like somebody somehow, I don't know, our developer figured it out, somehow locked in 3 Jewel Crafter gems. And we have idiot checks. We don't let you do that. So somehow they must have had like some cache version and then like did something else, like locked in an item with a Jewel Crafter gem and then reloaded from the armory or something crazy that they managed to get 3 Jewel Crafter gems.
right.
Well, so what was happening is their setup scored better than Mr. Robot's setup, because once he optimized, he would remove one of those Jewel Crafter gems. And they're like, the score went down. Okay, let me look. Oh, of course the score went down. Wait, how did you do that? So yeah, things like that. Or, there was like a main hand, offhand. Like if you equipped an offhand, we would take the gems out of the main hand, but only during relative ranking, and some crazy things that you're like, really? This was in beta for like a month and a half. And the day you launch it, the one day you launch it, you get like 10 random things.
Well, that's how it
That's
works.
usually how those things work, right? You
Yep.
just toss it in production, and that's when the real testing sort of begins. You
Right,
got
yep.
all these users descending on it. So yeah, all those permutations that you really couldn't account for during the
Right.
test period.
Hey, our users are free testers, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
how it works?
I have a framed picture of the most interesting man in the world saying, I don't always test my code, but when I do, it's in production.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've seen that. We have that at our office too.
I swear to
Yeah.
God, I framed it. It's in my desk.
So funny story on that, we were talking with Riot, the people who make League of Legends.
Yeah.
We were just chatting with them and talking with a bunch of other people, and they were like, hey, we want to learn more about you. And one of them was like, hey, how do you test your code? Do you have, like, what are the scenarios that you guys create? There's a word for this. Like,
What are you talking about?
I don't know. There's, like, real ways that real people test code and, like, stuff. So anyway, they're asking us about this, and we're like, oh, we just push it live. They were horrified. And we're like, well, look, come on. We have like 1 to 2 million users, in any given, 2-week span. If there's a bug, they'll find it in an hour, and the world is not going to end. But if you just put it to production, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, a lot of people just feel that anyway, think that anyway. So
yeah,
that's
that's
true.
true.
it's like, oh, they don't even. Do you test your stuff? I mean, that happens all the time with them.
Right. Poor Blizzard.
Mhm.
They get the short end of the stick. Part of it is just the level of complexity, right? Like if you're dealing with a game that's got a lot of moving parts, hundreds of developers working on the same code at the same time.
Oh man.
That's why they kind of, their jaw dropped when you guys are like, yeah, no, we just push it live because
yeah.
it's a website.
I could not imagine the level of testing you would have to do for a game like Warcraft.
I think they have as many testers as they do programmers.
I would not doubt it.
That somewhere.
And still, it goes live and boom, dozens of.
Yep.
It's impossible not.
Right. Yeah. You just can't run all the different permutations of crazy things that you can do in the game.
Right.
Well, they try,
with a limited number of people, and they absolutely try. And then people come in and it's broken. Why do they release these buggy patches? Well,
yes.
Well, the basic play stuff, I don't think I remember them releasing a patch that was fundamentally unplayable for everybody. Like, they haven't done that in a while, or at least not that I remember. But every time they add a feature, and every patch basically is a whole bunch of new features, each of them has the potential to go back and cause bugs all over the place in the past. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't imagine what kind of regression testing they have to do with the game,
Yeah.
Hey, this is probably off topic for listeners, but did you guys get affected by that Microsoft Azure outage yesterday?
Oh, yesterday?
I thought so.
Hey, Yellow, was there a Microsoft Azure outage yesterday? That affected us? Oh. No, I didn't see it. But, so we do have Windows Azure, and it's only gone down 2 times. And both were quite hilarious. I mean, in retrospect, of course we were mad. Was Leap Day a year and a half ago. They did not have the Leap Day in their security certificates. And you're like, who's the year 2000 guy that didn't think of this, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so that went down for, I think, a good 24 hours. Our site was live. We just couldn't make changes. But, of course, it was, around some patch or something where we're like, there's a bug, I need to update it, and we couldn't. And then the other one was, they have, security certificates, and then that they allow us to have or something like that. Like, we go to them, and they're like, yes, here's your security certificate. Well, all of their security certificates expired on the same day, and the person at Microsoft had never renewed it on their end. So that one, but I did not hear about the one yesterday. I'm sure we would have heard about it from one of our users, but
I only saw an offhand comment on Reddit about it where people were saying, yeah, is it down for everybody or just me?
Yeah, I wonder if it was
everybody.
A limited outage or something
Yeah, it must have been. So
one set of servers.
Have you guys? We had you on the show back in April, I think.
I think so. Yep.
What kind of features have you guys been working on since then?
Oh yeah, all sorts of good stuff. So in April I think we had the Valor upgrades and the Best in Bags already live. We've added a bunch of features to that, nice little quality of life things. Like when you do Best in Bags, Mr. Robot finds the best set of gear. Actually, we had a big update on that recently, so I'll explain that one too. So in Best in Bags, Mr. Robot will find the best set of gear for your main spec, and then he locks all that in and finds the best set of gear for your off spec. Now, let's say you only have one helmet. He'll use the helmet in both your main and your off spec, but since it's locked in for your main spec, he'll leave your main spec gems, enchants, and reforges on there instead of changing them around so that you don't have to constantly go back and forth. And then,
awesome.
Right? Yeah, that's the huge upgrade we had, is that now we read your primary and secondary spec, you tell us which is your main, and then it's a nice quality of life change. And so then you get all of your offset gear, and sometimes it's an item that's sitting in your bags that you don't have equipped, and sometimes it's your main spec item. It might still be the best. Like, say it's a level 522, that's going to be better than a 496, even though you could have regemmed or reforged the 496 one. So yeah, so that's kind of one of the big things we just changed. And that's one of the premium features, which is $1 a month. But the one thing we launched for everybody is dual spec. So previously, I don't know how much hunters run into this problem because we do it with Moonkin and my healer. It drives me crazy. I'd site and I'd load my heal druid, and I'd optimize, and I'd be all excited, and then I'd leave the site, I'd go in game, I'd do my raid, and then afterwards I would change to Moonkin so I could do a couple of daily quests, and then I log out. And then the next day I'm like, oh, I have to get ready for my raid. Let me click update from Armory. Oh, my Moonkin just overrode everything. So now that we have dual specs, what happens in that situation is we read that it's Moonkin and we import it to your secondary or whatever tab it happens to be, and main, like the primary spec alone in that case. And so you can switch back and forth between them now and not overwrite it. So that's really, really nice.
Yeah, it won't be quite as big a deal for hunters, but that isn't to say at different points in our history we've had, stat values might be different, things like that.
Right.
So nothing quite as big as what you're talking about with heal to Moonkin, but
right.
But still nice to be able to change one from the other. And who knows, we might have our gearing or reforging completely different for something random that we're doing a soloing thing in one spec,
Right.
and we don't want that affecting what we're doing for our primary. So that makes sense.
Yep. So yeah, so that's really nice. People really, really have been asking for that one. So we got that one live. Yeah, those are the big ones. The two big ones, and of course, we've got with 5.4, we've got the bonus rolls will be updated. So for those of you that don't know, the bonus rolls calculator, it's in the little find upgrade button. If you're in like LFR or normal, you basically tell Mr. Robot, hey, can you help me find the best bosses to spend my bonus rolls on? And so numbers to help you make that decision. The first number is the chance to win an upgrade. So we look at your current gear, and then we look at everything the boss drops, and we look at the upgrade score. And so say the boss drops 4 things that are an upgrade for you. Well, if you can use all 4, you have a 15% chance to win that item, and that's just because the bonus roll has about a 15% chance to win. Now let's say only 2 of them are upgrades. Well, you would have a 7.5% chance to win. So we kind of show you that section. And then the next number we show you is the average upgrade score. So of the 4 items, let's say all of them are, about a 200-point upgrade. So your average would be 200-point upgrade. And then let's say another one upgrade is worth 2,000 points and the rest are worth 200. So we'll show the average being around 1,600. That was seriously probably bad math in my head. It's probably more like 400. Anyway, so we show the average upgrade score so that hey, of all the items I have a chance to win, here's what the average will be. And then the last number we show is the biggest upgrade score. And so that can help you make a decision because say you have a 15% chance to win from 2 different bosses. And one of them has an average, or so let's say they both have an average score of 200 points, but one of them has a chance to win a 2,000-point upgrade, and then a bunch of 10-point upgrades, right? You might be like, well, I'm going to gamble. I'm gonna roll on that. And so we just kind of give you all of the information to help you make your decision on which bosses to spend your rolls on.
When you're talking about average, if you have if everything except, let's say, your weapon, let's say you have a chance of a weapon from a bonus roll, but everything else is a downgrade, would your average, do you discard the negative values, or what do you do?
Yeah, good question. So the average is only the items that are upgrades, and then probably what you would be looking for is the percent chance to win then.
Right.
So in that case, it would maybe be like a 2% chance to win an upgrade, and then if you win, the average score is of the items that are still upgrades. So we do discard any neutral and downgrades in that number.
Okay.
But you can click on any of the bosses, you can click on it and then see what the items are, and you can see their rankings.
That's awesome. So so this is something that you would have running as what, part of the add-on, or do you use a website?
Oh, yeah. So right now that uses the website, and the reason for that is, we'd love to pull a bunch of the stuff into the add-on, but we would have to recreate the entire algorithm into Lua and then debug 2 sets, and that just doesn't sound like fun for our 1.5 developers. Yeah, so right now, so it's on the website. If you click the Find Upgrades button, there's a bunch of things you can do in Find Upgrades. You can look for Valor upgrades. You can just look and browse and be like, hey, I want to look at this zone, and you can just look. And then the bonus roll feature is also in that menu. And same with like currencies, you can look at the best bind on equip and crafted items that you can basically buy off the auction house, and basically any way to get an upgrade should be in that list.
Yeah, and there's even, like, I always reach a point in a lot of these tiers of content where there might only be one or two upgrades for me left in LFR, and I'm not entirely sure where they are all the time. So once you're starting to get to that point, you can say, okay, what LFRs do I still need to be running if I'm looking for not just the Valor tokens, but also gear? So that you're making better decisions on that too, and also saving yourself some time rather than, say, going individually through each boss in Atlas Loot, pouring through everything to see if you have any upgrades.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a really good point too. That's one of the ones I probably use the most, like halfway through a patch, is it's like, well, which LFR should I run? And you ask this robot, and he'll tell you, he'll rank it and be like, oh, this is the, these are the bosses you need, so here's the wing you should run, and yeah, and it does the same thing for like 5-mans if you're gearing up an ult. It's like, which 5-mans should I run? And yeah, so that is a good one. And you're right, it's usually like halfway through, because like right now, when Siege of Orgrimmar launches, it's like they're all upgrades.
I didn't say everything's an upgrade when the thing first comes out. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there's no Valor gear being introduced this patch, which is a departure from what they've normally done. So that feature would become even more handy, I would think, since you're going to be doing more LFR and flex rate and all that stuff.
Right. Yep.
So one thing I think I remember when I was getting my only real character up to gear the first time was that the best sort of boost that I could give myself initially was craftable PvP gear, because obviously all the PvP stats are free now, right? So if you have, like, at the time it was a 450 blue. A 450 blue was sort of a, the best that you could get out of a 5-man non-heroic. And even though it didn't have the same variety of PvE specs, the gear itself was basically it was as good as any of the content I could run at the time. So I went and got myself kitted out in a whole set of that.
Nice.
And then of course the 2-set bonus being a whole bunch of agility didn't hurt either. And I replaced it pretty quickly. I think at that point epics were still pretty hard to find, but after about 2 weeks of work, I ended up replacing most of it. But is that something, like, if I just bring a brand new fresh level 90 into Ask Mr. Robot wearing quest greens and blues, would he say, your first step, go and get these things off the auction house?
Yeah, so it'd have to be in the upgrade finder. Well, no, I take that back. So the best thing to do first would be open the options menu, and in the options menu you can say what you're willing to accept. So you could, like, if you're not rating, you're a fresh 90, you're like, I can't get in, you would set like your LFR, normal, and heroic filters to none, or you could set it to like tier 14. You'd be like, oh well, I can get into Heart of Fear or whatever the lower level ones are. So you set those filters, and then you can also set like PvP gear filter. You can let it stay on, or you can always say to none, because some people might be like, oh, I don't want it or whatever. And you can also set.
This is craftable, right?
Yep.
Yeah, in the options, I'm actually looking at it right now, and they have a slot for BOE and crafted. And what I assume you could do is, like, say you were just looking for those, like, hey, what can I grab off the auction house because I'm Euripides and I have 1 million gold? So you could remove all the others. Well, I don't want world boss items, and I don't want these items, and I don't want this, and basically remove everything from your item restrictions except the BOE and crafted ones. So then it'll show you, hey, here's what you still have. Here's what you can go jump and grab off the auction house.
Yeah, and so what you can do with that then is click, once you have those settings in the options menu, you can click best in slot, and he'll find the best in slot with all the other gear excluded.
Oh, okay.
And then the other thing you could do is with the upgrade finder, if you go in the upgrade finder, there is a BOE crafted list, and he'll just give you that.
Yeah, I haven't actually used that, but I assume that's how it works, seeing it here in the options menu.
Yep.
You know what you guys should totally do? You should totally tie that, like, link from there to the Undermine journal for the realm of the character being looked at. And then you could literally send them to the current price and historical price of whatever gear they're looking at.
I would love to do that. So we've talked with WoW Auction, the guy from WoW Auction.
Oh yeah, WoW Auction.
And he's super excited too. Like, we're all excited. For us, it's just like, okay, we had like the big site update and the algorithm, And it's like, oh, that'd be so awesome. All right, now and the time to do that. But that would be really, really sweet. And what's funny is we get a lot of people asking us for the in-game mod. They're like, why are you grabbing my gold data? And I'm sure there's some people who are like, oh, are you going to try to hack my account? No. No, we're not going to. But the reason we grab that data is, excuse me, for when we're able to build in an auction house feature, we could now let people say limit it to the money I own or something like that.
Interesting.
Or limit it to
Very
10% of
interesting.
the gold I have available or something. Like you could budget it out and we could help people spend that money.
So,
Wow.
that's just okay. So here's one.
It's not there
Regardless
yet,
of how-
everybody.
Yeah.
But it would be cool, right?
That would be very cool. Yes.
Another one you could do. What is the biggest point upgrade I can get per gold? Like, if I want to
Yes.
spend 10,000 gold, what is the biggest point? Would it be to go and replace all of my greens with the crafted blue PvP gear, or would it be to go and buy one single really kick butt PvE, rating drop,
Like weapon or something.
That's it. Or, yeah, maybe
Right.
a weapon, or and then base that on either. I haven't. I should be fair. I haven't actually played it with WoW Auction very much, but I probably should. But whether you use that or any other statistics engine, just use like the historical price or the market price for whatever it is, and then just say, assuming you can get this for this much money, then your best upgrade for the gold is this, or this,
Right.
or this combination of like 8 other pieces or whatever,
Right. Yeah. So it'd actually be similar to the Valor upgrade. Right now in the Valor upgrade, you can rank it. You can say, tell me the biggest upgrade, or tell me the biggest points upgrade per Valor.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
it would
You've
be
already
something
done all the
totally
work.
similar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've
and
already
so,
done the work.
so then we would just have to plug it into something like that, because you're right, that would be really cool. Because you never know, maybe buying I should know what they're called, but the really expensive purple disenchant materials from Throne of Thunder. Those are expensive, and maybe, just maybe,
like
it's actually worth buying some of those as a new fresh 90, right? Like if you look at points per
you're
goal.
talking about if you disenchant the weapons, the shards that you get there?
Yeah, the shards when you disenchant the Throne of Thunder purples.
Right, of course, yeah.
That
Those
are very expensive, and they craft into
Well,
a
they
helm
were.
and boots.
That's right. Yeah, they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
upwards of like 5,000 or 10,000 gold each.
Right.
Now they're down to like 2,000. If 2,000.
Oh, wow.
Well, you can probably get them for 500 because the ones that you can use to make the old 496 gear.
Mhm.
Was it 496 or? Well, I forget. But the old ones, the blood spirits, those things are down to about 200 gold right now. So you can get yourself if
wow.
you're a plate DPS, those. I mean, I'm not saying my hunter doesn't wear plate DPS gauntlets. He just happens to be a blacksmith and sell a lot of plate DPS gauntlets.
Mhm.
And you can pick them up for like 5,000 gold now, and that's like probably better than anything you can get out of the most accessible LFRs.
Right.
So it's just a matter of time until that happens. And of course, as a hunter, they have all this stuff that I know for plate. They have for leatherworking. So except there doesn't appear to be as many leather workers out there willing to use their shards for that. So. Anywho, this isn't an economy show. I'm sorry. This keeps on happening. Why do I keep doing this?
Yeah, I'll have to
You should think
let
about
you guys
doing
be
one of
the-
those, Yuri. You should start one.
And I'll have to make sure I let you guys be the first to know when and if we actually are able to build that.
She mentioned the WoW auction thing, and I thought, here we go.
Yeah, you know what? I'll have you on my other show, my auction house show, and that's where we'll talk about it.
All
Right.
right.
I have probably, I hope this doesn't put you on the spot too much, but a question about a very specific item, and in this case, set bonus. Now, I assume modeling set bonuses usually isn't too hard because a lot of them are procs or chances on. It's very much like trinkets in that sense. But we have one coming up in 5.4 where it's every time you cast certain shots, so aim shot or multi-shot or arcane shot, it reduces the cooldown of your rapid fire by a certain by I think right now it's 8 seconds on the PTR.
Awesome.
How do
I like to
you?
call these Mr. Robot Breakers.
Yeah, yeah.
I was going to say, this
How
is
do you go
Blizzard just
about-
giving a big middle finger to all the theory crafters
Right.
out there.
Yeah, take us behind the scenes of how in the world you try to model this, because obviously
Right.
there's a big potential benefit, but for someone who say decides I don't want to cast Arcane Shot in a standard rotation, they might not be getting any, it's not going to proc automatically.
Right. So here, the way we estimate these is a lot of times we use SimC and use it with and without and just try to like play around and get an initial assessment. And of course, then we work with the communities to reevaluate anything that needs tweaking. And then we associate it, since everything we do is stat weight based, we have to give it a number. So we usually relate it to the most relevant stat. So in this case, would we assign it like an agility number maybe? Like here's how much extra agility you would need to do the same amount of damage as having an extra rapid fire.
Yeah,
If that makes sense, right?
Maybe haste.
Haste? Okay,
because
haste could be a good one.
Yeah, because it's increasing how often we're shooting.
Right.
That's
That's probably more likely. I don't do our stat weights, our other guy does.
Right. It's okay.
I'm like,
and
why don't
like
you
I
tie it
said,
to intellect?
Yeah, like I said, I realize this is putting you on the spot for what's going to be a very tricky thing to deal with. So
that's
okay.
we would no, totally fair. So we would, let's say, relate it to haste then, because that probably is the best thing. So they would say, okay, well that ends up being worth about 500 haste, let's say. So then in your stat weights, we basically take that set bonus and give it an extra, anytime it's active, we give it an extra 500 haste, and let's say your haste is rated at 0.5 weight, it would be an extra 250 points. And so then we can now have a number to compare that against not having the set bonus and having a different item.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's how we end up doing it. We always have to relate it to a number that matters, that has a stat weight, and figure it out from there.
So it's just a fair amount of testing and some reasonable modeling based on what you think we can get from it. Okay, that makes sense.
And then once like people have these items, so then it starts to like get tweaked maybe like a month or so later, because we actually have worlds of logs to look at. Because one is theory, right? And then like you say, the other is, well, what if people just aren't using Arcane Shot a lot, or
right?
Blah blah blah. Yeah.
a lot of this does have to come with that caveat, because with any modeling system, you're sort of assuming that you're following a standard rotation and casting certain shots using certain cooldowns. It can even, I've seen some that model latency to to adjust your best possible DPS, things like that. That's really going down the rabbit hole further than, frankly, a lot of hunters would ever need to do. But that's all out there, and it is very dependent on how you're going to play once you're in the fight. So theoretical DPS is not equivalent, and that's true of any model that you're going to use, not just with Ask Mr. Robot. The point is just to get close and give yourself the best chance once you're there.
Right. And one thing we haven't done in the past that we're thinking of doing this time around is publishing the set bonus values that we have. And we haven't published it not because we're like, ooh, it's super secret. It's just because, well, I have to go into the code, read it, and then put it on the blog.
Sure.
But then that allows, the hardcore theory crafters to look at it and be like, well, I see what you did, but in reality, it's going to be more like this, and then they can kind of help us adjust the numbers. And then people who want to know these numbers can know it, because a lot of times we'll get people who are like, hey, you're telling me that the 2-piece set bonus isn't worth it. Are you sure that's right? And so then this would kind of help these people decide if it's right or not, and kind of see behind the scenes. And so I think that'll be really nice. And we have the trinket page. I don't know if you've visited that, but the trinket page shows the value we're assigning each trinket, because we treat trinkets just like I explained for set bonuses. And so there's a possibility we can add, it's just a code thing, right? But that we can add the set bonuses in there too, so people can kind of see how those rank. Yep, all sorts of fun. And some people are, want like, well, let me just say always keep the set bonus or always ditch it. And we're very resistant, because we're like, well, it really, really does matter, that it's like a weight, right? Like either you're making use of it or not, and it's all based on the weights. So
Yeah, and I am. I'm on the trinket page now, looking at it, and it. But yeah, just another interesting tool.
Right, exactly. And just kind of shows like the math behind it, because otherwise our trinkets are in a little black box, and people are like, I don't know why it's doing this. It's like, all right, go to the trinket page. We'll make it public so that there's, so that you can decide how it's going. And sometimes, that lets people find things that need to be tweaked. Like I think we tweaked a couple of the healer ones once like a bunch of World of Logs came out. Things like that.
Yeah, so that's the thing that's interesting is the whole idea of optimization is basically coming, starting off with the numbers and then ending up with a recommendation and then seeing if it bears out in reality. But, sometimes there's a question of, is one particular character configuration performing better than another one because it's a better configuration or because the player that's playing it is better?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because theoretically, if you look at it this way, if enough of us decided to just play really badly, but optimize really well, or the other way around, if we decided to optimize really badly but play really well, we might be able to skew the actual results coming out of World of Logs.
Right. Yeah. One thing that I've kind of wanted to do with this next expansion coming out. So our healing team, we have a 10-man team, and we have 2 druid healers, which has been awesome because druids have been a little underpowered, and we're like, cool, we've got 2 of them. One of them's me, and so we both chose very different optimization strategies. I love the high spirit builds because I can just spam cast everything, and our other druid tried the super high haste build. But you never know, is he a better healer than me, or am I a better healer than him? So what I really want to do with the patch is choose our methods, do it for a couple of weeks, see who works best on each boss, and then swap. And be like, all right, I'll do your version, you do mine. And then let's say he always out heals me. It's like, okay, he's just a better player. And which one? But then you're like, okay, which one did he do better at, right? Because then that's going to be the better one.
Yeah, healing's such a different animal than DPS because with DPS, there's usually a correct answer to, like, what am I casting right now? There is a best answer, and with healing, that's not necessarily the case. It's what is your role? What do you find yourself healing? What do you prefer to cast? What's your group having trouble with? Are your tanks under gear? Do you take a lot of raid damage? There's so many variables with healing that make. That make optimizing, that make saying this is your optimal spell or stat or whatever, completely void.
Right.
So I can't even begin to understand trying to figure out and lock down theory crafting. For as much as we get into it with hunters, at least like we have definable values.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, but it would be fun, like with a hunter, to swap, right? To like you do your. Like say you prefer haste, and no, you're like,
at all.
No, I just want to do the best.
I'm not swapping my hunter for anything.
No, I mean like swapping strategies. Like if you've got 2 hunters in the raid group.
Like one stacking crit, one stacking master.
Sure,
right,
that might be fun.
And like say you're stacking crit and you're out DPSing them. Well, if you really want to find out if it's skill or the optimization, you could swap strategies.
Yeah,
the only way to really do it is you'd have to give him like the password and give him your account and swap accounts and.
No, actually, a buddy of mine in my old guild and I used to do that all the time. We were both pretty skilled hunters, and he would always. I mean, we basically just always played different specs for the hell of it, and there was a healthy competition going on, and all different gear combinations or stat combinations and specs and things like that, and we would swap from time to time just to sort of try it out. Basically, what you're talking about. I don't know that we ever came to any defined conclusions, but we also weren't. I mean, it was all just anecdotal stuff. We weren't, tracking our numbers as heavily as you might.
Yeah.
Speaking of different gear changes and things like that. I mean, one of the things, 5.4 is introducing the Flex Raid, and now there's like Thunderforge gear with all these different levels of gear. How has that impacted you guys? I mean, that sounds like that has to be challenging as far as optimizing things, because the number of permutations has got to be going up, and the different gear levels and everything's just got to be crazy.
So there's a couple of things going on. One is we sort of lucked out in one sense that we came into the WoW game so late. I mean, we've been playing since vanilla, but we didn't make our website until like 2.5 years ago, which is really late compared to like all the other fan sites. But we lucked out because we saw what happened with all of these other sites and tools. Every time there was a patch, it was just, such an ordeal for them to have to update it. So we built our site very modular, so it's like everything's kind of quarantined in its own little space. So if you add something like flex rating, it's like, well, that's fine. We already have a system that reads eye levels and assigns normal, LFR, and heroic. We just have to add another little eye level detector. And so that part ends up really easy because we just built it smart from the ground up because we've learned what happens in these games.
Wouldn't it increase your cost, though, of doing the calculations now that you have all these different potential values?
Right. So that is the other piece. So the gear lists get really long. And so for those of you who don't know, the way we rank these gear lists, if you open up, like say you click on your weapon and then we load a list of weapons, we're scoring every single weapon in that list. And if you do it on the absolute scale, it's not too bad. Ranking, what happens is we assume you're changing that weapon and that weapon only. So we look at all of your gear and then say there's 100 weapons in the item. We're equipping each weapon and then doing an entire optimization to look for the best gems, enchants, and reforges for the whole thing. Because you can't say, oh, here's the best gems for this weapon, because it might really be that, well, you're going to take a hit gem off something and then put it on this weapon because then blah, 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 right? So... Yeah. Well, he wouldn't put hit because hunters have a hit problem right now. They're always overhit. Anyway, so we run an entire optimization. It's basically like running 100 full optimizations just to load that list. And whenever there's like an extra gear, like eye level, it's like, oh, now there's a whole nother set with LFR. It's like, great. that's going to make Mr. Robot chug a little bit more. So we have a whole bunch of tricks that have taken a ton of time to try to make. That's why we want the optimizer to be so fast, because it runs the same optimizer on the relative ranked lists. Mm-hmm. And we're getting most optimizations done in about 50 to 100 milliseconds.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so then we just kind of try to like run that in the relative ranked list, get a few more tricks up our sleeve to make it quicker. Like we look through the list and anything, like with this branch and bound thing, any item that's going to be a for sure downgrade, like we don't run an optimization on. We just say it's a downgrade. And then, so that saves us some time, and yeah, so that, you're right. Yes, I can tell you guys are programmers. It's, it adds up. But we do use, Windows Azure and have a lot of like, ways to save money with that. We automatically spin up servers when the processors are doing too much, and then we automatically spin them down like during off-peak hours and when they're not busy, and so that ends up saving us quite a bit of cash.
So do we have any listener Q&A that we could talk about before we wrap up?
Nope. Everybody's been pretty happy.
Awesome. Okay, so I know you've got some place to be, and it's about 1 minute till the end of the show. We should probably do our outro, but before we do that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Yes, we really like, getting out in front of the community and explaining all the stuff that's going to happen during a patch, and hey, chat about cool ideas like integrating to auction house data.
Right.
Well, it's a great site, and it's come a long way since you first got it up and running, and it just continues to evolve. And
yeah. Well, that's one of the fun things about it is that we decided to quit our day jobs and give this a shot. So there's 3 of us who work on it. And so we work on it full time, which means we can develop cool things all the time and make sure we're updated the day the patch launches. And so that's a lot of fun. And that's, why we put out the premium. We're like, okay, so ads don't pay anything. Let's make some really cool features people want, and let's keep it affordable. Like, most times it's like, oh, it's $60 a year, and you're like, ours is $12 a year. Like, we just really wanted to make it affordable. As a person who plays WoW, that's what I would like to pay.
Yeah, so. And if you think of it, I pay like $3 a month for a Mumble server. I used to pay $20 a month for a Vent server. And this, people are used to this kind of thing. Not every player is going to get, is going to make that jump,
Right, and they don't need to.
For one thing, a lot of these players are really young, right? They just flat out somebody else pays for their, they get game cards as birthday gifts, right? And that's how they pay for the game. But
right.
there is quite a few people who have legitimate jobs and money to spend, and this kind of thing isn't that it's not a crazy amount. So I still haven't made the jump yet, but I think I'm probably going to. I mean, it's just so useful without having to pay for anything. So I have done the need to do any in-game optimization, but I think that add-on might be what breaks it for me.
Yeah, and obviously we're talking about Hunters and WoW, but Ask Mr. Robot also does League of Legends and the Old Republic. So I know nothing of either one of those, but if anyone's into those, check out AMR for that as well.
Yeah, thanks. They are fun. We're addicted to League of Legends.
Well, we did have one question, sort of, which is if someone finds a problem, finds a fault, how do they fill you in so you can fix it?
The best way would be to stop by our forums, which is forums.askmrrobot.com. And the reason that's best is we have several people who hang around the forums and kind of help us troubleshoot and figure out what might be going wrong. But you can also hit us up on Twitter, which can be a little hard because it's 140 characters, and I'm like sending people 5 tweets asking them one question, right? And then also you can send an email to feedback@askmrrobot.com, and that goes to me, and then usually I just bring it to everybody on our forums and see if anyone else can reproduce a problem, because again, sometimes it's like, wait, I can't reproduce it. What's going on with the setup? Maybe somebody else's computer can.
Yeah, press the shift button and then click the reload and see if it goes away.
Right. I don't know how many times I'm like, well, can you try clearing your cache just to make sure?
Yeah, people don't understand how much that can affect things, but
it really can, especially around patches. Everybody, if something does look funky, we're updating like every day for like 2 weeks after a patch, tweaking things. And sometimes, you get that cache and the bug's not fixed if you have the cached version. So,
anywho, that said, you have been listening to episode 183 of the Hunting Party Podcast. This is Euripides from OutDPS, WoW Insider, and Call to Auction.
And I'm Dark Brew from thebrewhall.com and the Brew Hall on Twitter.
And I'm Arth from the Warcraft Hunters Union.
And I'm Alexander from the Hunting Party Podcast.
You can check us out on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and if you don't use any of that stuff, we just have a regular old RSS feed. The links for all this stuff are in the show notes. And if you like us, don't be shy about leaving us a review on iTunes or YouTube, especially one where you mention how many spore bats you keep stabled.
You can submit a title for this week's show by emailing us at huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com and have your name mangled on air by professionals.
All right, stay thirsty, my friends. Remember to drink your Dark Brew Lager.
Don't forget to spear and neuter your feral druid.
For the Horde.
And Nerf Canada.
Hey,
and thank you to our guest.
Yeah, seriously,
Yes.
Thank you so much. And Ali,
thanks,
before I
guys.
forget, next week we got to tag one of these lines for Arth, because aside from saying that he's Arth and Nerf Canada, he doesn't have anything. And I keep on forgetting in there in the middle
Yeah,
of
well,
those
it's easy enough to
2
change.
lines.
I noticed that, and I was contemplating stealing someone's line, but I didn't because I'm a nice guy. So.
And you would have made somebody else drink.
Right.
We have a Hunting Party Podcast drinking game, which we just blew the barn doors off of because some of the rules are anytime we talk about PvP, anytime we talk about the economy, I think.
Well, anytime you talk about the economy or auctions.
anytime I
or-
derail,
Nice.
So there was like a
Anytime
5
I
minute long
talk at all.
chug there. Yeah, there was a 5 minute long chug in the middle of that show.
Yes. And I'll have to remember this for next time and like find out what they really all are. and
Oh,
just-
yeah.
yeah.
That's-
Well,
I
we
just
posted
listened to
the
last
rules
week's
on-
podcast.
We gotta-
We have the
rem-
rules.
We got to remove the Frostheim ones and add some new ones, though.
Yeah, we should.
I did delete one, but I do have extra lines in my section that you can feel steal any of my Orcish.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, that's right. We should ping Boz Animal, see if he wants to help us rewrite the rules again.
And,
Yeah, if you still... Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I had a question. So one of you is from Brew something?
Yeah, mine is thebrewhall.com, yes.
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with monks?
No, it's all
Okay.
hunters in
Okay.
kind of dwarf. It's really dwarves in beer, dwarves, and
Nice.
hunters.
Okay,
They-
I was going to say, because we
they
always
had
keep our eye
that
open for good monk
first.
resources, too.
No, I'm not a good monk resource. Unless you unless you're talking about the television show, which I've seen a few episodes, which is pretty
Oh, right.
I have a monk, and I use it to roll around the Stormwind Gardens while my kid is sitting on my lap, because that's the one animation in the game that she loves the most. It's just watching the Pandarian monk just do the forward roll. That's literally as far as I've gone in theory crafting the monk. Which is to say, not far at all.
At one point I tried to keep up on Disc Priest theory crafting, because that's the only other tune I play, and I know a ton of hunters who play Disc Priests.
Yeah, I wonder why that is.
I'm sure it's just, I mean, my sample size is so small, but it's probably just me. But like,
no, I played one too.
Within my little bubble of WoW, so many hunters that like that's their tune. Their only other tune is their, oh yeah, well I also have a Disc Priest. And that's the only other tune that I've ever wanted to play or ever enjoyed playing. And I've tried a lot of the other classes, and I just hate most of them. And that's the only other one that gives me any satisfaction outside of Hunters. Well, so, yeah, I don't know why. I'm sure there's some psychological thing there, but I don't know why that is.
So I guess we should call it for this week. Thank you again, V. And we look forward to having you back on the show again soon. And,
yeah, definitely.
As soon as you guys have that auction house thing, send me an email. And I might actually, I was only half joking. If I ever actually get around to doing another call to auction episode, I'll maybe get you guys in on that.
Definitely, yeah.
Yes, I know. I'm very badly overdue.
Well, I'm going to start putting in lines for Arth about like call to auction if you don't put one out soon.
Well, you had it was a leftover line from Frostheim or Yuri or something about the Auction Call Girls podcast.
That was Frostheim's old joke.
Yeah, which I chose not to read, but yeah, I mean, I can edit my own lines. I gotta think of some stuff here that I
just the last 10 seconds of the show are basically us all saying the funniest things we can think of. So
right,
we're all good to go. All right, I'm gonna drop off. I have family
cool.
coming over.
Later, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. Thanks again, V.
Bye,
yeah, thanks. It was fun.
Yep. We'll see you guys next week.
I can jump shot, BM, MM, and SB. I can rock out any tree. Never worried about my threat, 'cause I've got FD and misdirect. Catching loose mobs in my traps. I never miss, 'cause I am hit capped. 'Cause I'm the hunter, not the marked. I'm the fighter, not the spark. I'm the kiter, not the kite. I'll top the meters every fight. Mating in a cave, dealing death. Just me, my gun, and my trusty bed. Now let's begin with Illidan, Osirian, and Kil'jaeden, Magdamar, Asgalor, Gruul, Cthulhu, and Razorgore, Onyxia to Ragnarok.